all aboard. Okay, slip the lines there.
This is George and Michael Ford's boat. They're a father and son team. Between the two of them, they've got decades of experience working the water.
How old were you when you started?
Oh, 8, 9-year-old.
Really?
Yep.
So how did you learn?
Oh, from my father. He learned from his father. It's passed on down through
carried
generations.
down in the family.
So we'll be fishing for cod today, but we'll be fishing for a story too, about the way of life here and how it all changed.
So if you were to kind of explain how fishing has impacted this community, how would you kind of explain that?
Well, I mean, the roots was that's all there was ever here on Fogo Island, really. Cod fishery. You either fished or you work at the fish plant.
Yeah.
Cod was probably one of the most abundant creatures on the planet. It's the most abundant ground fish we have. And here in Newfoundland, we have a huge continental shelf that has a lot of bottom area that's at a depth where these species can live and thrive. That's why there's so much of it.
During the second half of the 20th century, the practice of fishing became a lot more industrial. Trawler ships would drag giant nets across the ocean floor, scooping up too many tons of groundfish and altering the cod's habitat.
The catch they took from that was 3 or 4 or 5 times what people had taken sustainably for hundreds of years. And that was the period when the greatest fishery in the world at the time collapsed.
By 1992, the Newfoundland cod numbers had dropped to just 1% of what they'd been before the 1960s. It was a national tragedy. Realizing that the species was on the brink, the Canadian government declared a moratorium, a ban that put an end to commercial cod fishing in Newfoundland.
And when the moratorium came there in '92, boy, I tell you, people was pushing panic buttons.
Yeah.
A lot of them got out of the fishery and got jobs elsewhere, you know.
Yeah.
But the fishery is really what keeps this place going.
In the Atlantic provinces, approximately 40,000 people lost their jobs. Newfoundland was the hardest hit. Life was out of balance, but if you give nature some time and space, it can respond in dynamic ways.
When cod was depleted by the trawlers, those species that it once ate came up and flourished in abundance. So Newfoundland really saw this huge shift from cod fishing and ground fish fishing to invertebrate fishing, particularly shrimp and crab, which are now just as valuable as cod once was.
This domino effect in the ecosystem is called a trophic cascade.
Yes, that seemed like when one species failed, another one took its place, and that was the savior.
Yeah.
After '92 was that snow crab, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's a balance that needs to be struck between fishing for cod and fishing for the food of cod. And that's really where we're learning about the ecosystem, how the ecosystem is working.
So cod fishing does continue here today, but it's changing. A growing number of next-generation fishermen, like Michael, are trying to work in more sustainable ways. Smaller boats, simpler gear, and a focus on quality over quantity with the cod they catch.
Oh, look at that.
Let her go?
Yep, let her
Hey,
go.
watch it up. This is what you don't open there. That rope in the grave.